Most of us were rounded up, put in camps for orderly disposal. Spurned in by laser scan. Some of us were kept alive to work, loading bodies. The disposal units ran night and day. We were that close to going out forever.
What did you see when you were hearing this scene? Did you see an Holocaust movie? Maybe a survivor? What are the images that come to our mind when we listen to these words? Maybe photographs from a concentration camp, showing prisoners doing forced labor? Or maybe iconic images that characterize our visual memory of the Holocaust, like the liberation footage of barbed wire? What do we see? Actually, this scene is not from a Holocaust movie. It is from a science fiction film.
There was a nuclear war. A few years from now, all this whole place, everything, it's gone. Just gone. We're survivors.
Linda Hamilton and Michael Biehn are sitting in a car, hiding from the Terminator, a machine that was sent back from the future. Linda Hamilton's and Michael Biehn's baby will become the savior of the world. Here, Biehn tells about the future, not about the past. But he tells about the future by evoking images and memories that remind us of the Holocaust. The Holocaust turned into a popular template, into something that helps us to understand atrocity, violence, also in different contexts. Images that migrate into different contexts. Images from the Holocaust that became icons, symbols for mass murder.
No. I grew up after, in the ruins, starving, hiding from HKs.
HKs?
Hunter-killers. Patrol machines built in automated factories. Most of us were rounded up, put in camps for orderly disposal. Spurned in by laser scan.
A tattoo on his arm,
They had no names,
reminding of historical
numbers
footage
tattooed
taken
on
by
their
the
arms.
Soviets at the liberation of Auschwitz. Children presenting their numbers.
And then we realized that they are putting this number on our flesh, on our arms.
An iconic gesture that migrates also into different contexts, into films about possible futures and imagined pasts.
Moulton, Alabama.
I never asked your name.
A gesture and a sign that becomes universal, that becomes a migrating image,
Is that real?
which can be evoked in any context in popular culture.
Sorry, I've just never seen a kid with a tattoo before. What's it mean? 11.
You're so proud of being a mutant. Where's your mark?
I have been marked once, my dear, and let me assure you, no needle shall ever touch my skin again.
Some of us were kept alive to work.
What are migrating images?
The disposal units ran night.
How do they shape our memory of the Holocaust? Barbie Selitzer, in her article on Remembering to Forget, describes this process of decontextualization. As soon as we see the agonized collectives of survivors and victims, gaunt faces behind barbed wire, vacant stars of the tortured, and the contouredments of torture, we recognize the atrocity aesthetic. And the media help us to respond to that aesthetic by showing us where to position new horrors, rather than understand them, how to classify, categorize, and in many cases forget what we are seeing. Consider the following example. It could have been from just another Holocaust movie. When watching it, think about all the visual stereotypes and images that we know from other movies about the Holocaust. Pause here and write down 5 examples, images, situations, symbols that reminded you of other Holocaust movies or of visual Holocaust memory in general. Now let's continue to watch and see what happens next. Suddenly, the typical scene of a Holocaust movie transformed into a mysterious encounter with the super extra-human abilities of its protagonist. Actually, we are in a superhero movie set mainly in a distant, not too far future about mutants. Let's watch the whole scene again.
Mutation. It is the key to our evolution. It has enabled us to evolve from a single-celled organism into the dominant species on the planet. This process is slow, normally taking thousands and thousands of years. But every few hundred millennia, evolution leaps forward.
This is the opening sequence of the first X-Men movie from 2000. X-Men is about mutants that try to cope with their special abilities. We encounter 2 groups of them, one led by Professor X, Xavier. They try to use their abilities for the benefit of humanity and assimilate, and the second, a particularist group head by Magneto, that fight against human actions to control the mutants. The opening sequence characterizes Magneto as a survivor of the Holocaust and thereby motivating his actions. And it uses a lot of well-known photographs and images from Holocaust memory. Here, for instance, the film refers to the well-known trope of rainy weather and muddy ground in concentration camps, which we know from a lot of other movies, like here, Sophie's Choice. The next scene shows us the perspective of a guard watching the incoming prisoners. Also, this is a famous scene known from photographs from concentration camps. We then see people walking in between barbed wire fence. Also, this is well known from the liberation footage from Auschwitz. As you see here, the film also uses very well-known symbols like the yellow star to indicate the scene. This scene is especially interesting because here the film uses the point of view perspective. He clearly indicates young Magneto as a witness. From his point of view, we are watching very typical scenes that remind us of other films, historical photographs, and the visual memory of the Holocaust, including the gesture of showing the tattooed number in close-up on the arm of a prisoner. This POV shot is typical for witnessing aesthetics and shows us that Magneto is also characterized not only as a survivor, but also as a witness, bearing testimony of what he saw and experienced in the camps, which created a traumatic situation which motivates his later actions. Furthermore, the view of Magneto here is indicated as image, so the film highlights the references he takes from visual Holocaust memory. We see the victims walking into the camp. We see German guards and soldiers using brutal force. We experience a situation of selection, very iconic for the memory of the Holocaust, like seen here in a photo from the Auschwitz album. We hear the screaming, we hear dogs barking, and we experience, as the central element of this scene, also the separation of the family, which later motivates the development of Magneto's abilities. We can also see that the whole setting, the costumes and everything are designed from historical photographs. Take for instance Magneto here, who reminds us of children from the ghettos through his specific clothes. Then the film suddenly changes. It now turns from an historical movie into a superhero movie. We see something fantastic, something non-realistic. We see how Magneto's inner resistance against being forced to leave his parents awakes his abilities of magnetic force. But even here, when the film already indicates that it is not an historical movie, but a fantastic superhero movie, it still refers to the well-known iconography of the Holocaust, like here in the iconic view of the gate.